SpaceCorp 2025-2300. This is a game with a 4X theme. It is about space exploration. It has an epic span, but it's not exactly a 4X game. If nothing else, we're missing one of the X's. We're missing the exterminate. In fact, mechanically speaking, the game is basically a Euro game, which I'm just saying without any sort of negative connotation. Euro games can be a lot of fun. But there is just this element here that I want you to know, so you don't think they're gonna get out there and build space bases and develop technology so that then you can try to destroy each other. In SpaceCorp 2025, 2300, players will go on this epic journey. They represent groups or civilizations or companies that are trying to expand into space. And the game is played in 3 phases that are that have differences from one another to the point that in fact they are played on different boards. You start from the Earth, then you move towards the outer regions of the solar system, and in the 3rd phase of the game you reach for the stars. So it's a pretty impressive, pretty epic span. It is a card-driven game with a lot of different options, with a lot of different interesting mechanics that interlock with one another, and it is also playable solitaire, not by playing multiple sides at the best of your possibilities, but simply by playing it against an AI that will control the competition, will control different other parties that are trying to score more points than you or trying to achieve more profit than you. Yeah, this is a game where ultimately you're reaching for the stars, but you win by bringing home big bags full of space dollars. Anyways, let me show you how the game works. The game is divided in 3 ages. You can play a shorter version by only playing some of those, so starting from the 2nd or ending at the 2nd or playing a single one. But if you want to have the full experience, you play 3 ages, and they take place on 3 different boards. This is the board in which you play the first age, the first phase. We will start from Earth. We will send out our teams to exploit, explore, build spaceports, build bases, and we're moving towards the edge of our solar system, or at least further from Earth than we were at the beginning. The end of an age is determined by one of several factors. Players may exhaust one of the decks, we'll talk about that. Players may fulfill a number of contracts from that board, we'll talk about that. Trust me for now, that there will be a time when the age will be over. Then you take this map here and you flip it to the other side, and now it becomes a player aid / sideboard that you will use to organize upgrade cards that will become available in the 2nd and the 3rd age, and then you have a player aid for some of the things that apply to the 3rd age, in particular to colonies that have their own set of rules. Meanwhile, this has become our new board. By the way, of course, as you can imagine, to do that, to flip a board, to turn it into a sideboard, you clean it up. In fact, you will retain not many of the things that you have from the previous age. You will retain profit, which is important because it is a measure of your success, and it is what you need at the end of the game in order to win. Now we are in the moving towards the outer areas of the solar system. Now we move towards Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. We got Neptune and Pluto out there. Hooray, Pluto is there. We know there's a whole carrel, there's a whole controversy around it. Here, interesting enough, as soon as we move outside of this area, we enter a radiation area. We need to use special cards and special actions to move and to build in radiation areas, so everything out of here, otherwise we're going to suffer a penalty. Also, the distances increase, as you can imagine. Although it doesn't look like the distance between this one and this one and this one are very different from one another in game terms, so they really are, as they very should be. When this age is over, now we travel to the star. We start the third phase of the game. This time we start from here and we move to different star systems. And now we're trying to not just build new bases, which is what we have done in the previous 2 ages, but also we're starting colonies. Now we're getting serious about colonizing space. That was all the boards, right? But wait, there's more. You have the business display that goes in an area where all players can reach it. It has a profit track where you keep track of how much profit you have, how many space dollars you have. That's how I like to think of them. And that basically means keeping track of score, because space dollars are what you need to win the game. Then we have contracts. Each age has 7 possible contracts, and the value of the contract will go to the player that first meets the conditions described there. For example, having the first base on Mars, or having cards in 3 infra slots, or bases in 5 regions. The first player to meet that condition will place their marker there to indicate that the players cannot take advantage of the contract anymore, and will acquire that amount of profit points. And then you simply do the same with these other contracts that unlock in the second phase, and these are the ones that are available in the third phase. But wait, there are more boards. Each player has a personal board, such as this one. You will use it to organize your base tokens. These bases you will build during the game, and they will give you different advantages based on refinery, spaceport, industrial, research, biolab, and so on and so forth. Different requirements, but also again different benefits. Here you have the progress wheel. There will be actions that will allow you to advance your genetics knowledge. You're turning into mutant starfish and other kind of like weird creatures. And you need to do that sometimes just to adapt to the weird places where you're going. And then scientific revelations that will also give you advantages. Basically, each time that this cube goes once all the way around the wheel, you will get a card representing an upgrade, either in the genetics department or in the revelation/scientific breakthrough department. Here you have the legacy production, where you will place 1 base and 1 discovery token from 1 age when you move to the next one. As I said, you need to clean up the board entirely. Most of what you have on one board is removed and gets out of the game when you move to the next board, but you can save 1 thing that you will keep producing in the following era. But super mega important is this area that you see here, which is the infra slot. The infra slots. You start with 2 abilities, with 2 sources of resources there, and then you will acquire more. The game is card driven. That means that each phase of the game, each age will have its own deck. You use this one at the beginning, this one is for the second age, and then this is the one you use when you reach the stars. Pretty thick decks. And so the basic idea is that during the game you will perform actions, and you will need to generate points to fuel your actions. When you take an action, the more points are associated with that action, the better. If I take a move and have a lot of points, it's good. Build, I want a lot of points, and so on and so forth. To generate those points, you can play cards from hand. You will have a hand of cards. Or you can use the ones that are produced from your board. Some of these cards, they may upgrade as infra. That means that you can play them there. They become part, again, of your generator of resources that are available each turn. Right now, for example, I have value 2 of moves each turn just because the stuff is there. And right now I would have research of 2 and move of 3. To which, again, I can add whatever is produced by my cards, just for a little bit of variety. Let's say that my board now looks like this. As the game progresses, you will have more powerful upgrades that will show up and that you can add to your board. Just to give an example, and you can replace an infra card, an infra upgrade, with another one by simply placing it there, by simply replacing it. The game at its core is pretty simple and yet at the same time also rather complex. The simple element comes from the fact that each turn the active player will mainly take an action. You select it, you resolve it, and you're good to go. There are a couple of other phases, but mainly a turn is your action. However, you have a large number of actions, different actions and different rules, and that is where the complexity comes from. Now, first you will need cards to activate effects, so a very important action is to research. You perform the research action, you collect research points, and then you can draw an equal number of cards, equal to the number of research points that you were able to produce. And you can draw those cards from the 4 that are available face up in the offer area and or from the current deck. So you'll get cards, hooray! Now it's time to use them. Also, we said you're going around space, so you definitely need to move. It is all about journeying to incredible places. You will have teams represented by these cubes, and you can perform the movement action to move them. To leave the place in which the team is sitting at the beginning of the turn, and to put it in the area in which the planet or the moon on which you are, it will cost you 1 movement point. Sometimes you have a penalty. For example, to leave the Earth, you have a gravity penalty of +2. So to leave the Earth is going to be 1, simply to leave it standard, plus that penalty. Then each time that you cross a border, you will pay the corresponding number of movement points. 1 point to go there. I'm adding 3 points to cross that border there. And then when you're landing, then you also spend a point. So a point to leave, a point to land, whatever is the cost of the edges that you're crossing, plus possible penalties. Now you went to a new place and you want to see what the heck is there. If the place in which you landed has an empty exploration box, then you can take the explore action. You generate exploration points, again by using infra and or cards, and you need to match or exceed the number written in the exploration box that you're using. This is 1, this is 2, for example. Once you produce those points, after selecting exploration action, you will simply draw the corresponding exploration, a tile from the corresponding pile, and these tiles have different things that they represent that you found. In the bottom left corner, they give you an advantage that you receive immediately, for example in this case 2 profits. In other cases you have their information in the bottom right corner, which may indicate stuff such as a modification of the cost to build a base there, production values, other things that they can do for you. Suppose, for example, that we found water there and we place it there, we collect a profit right away, and then there's also that modification. Now, if you have a team in an area and you have explored it, that is when you can take another action, which is to build. To build an action, I think you guessed it, you need to produce build points. And you need to produce points equal to the build value of the area in which you are. Say that would be 5, Mars would be 6, as modified by the stuff that you found. For example, to build a base here, it will cost me 4, 5 minus 1. When you build a base, you need to, on top of producing building points, there may be other requirements. Certain types of base require certain materials to be there, but then if you meet those requirements, then you can choose the kind of facility that you want to have, and they will do different things for you. Industrial will produce things, refinery will make production more efficient, shield factory will protect your interest against radiations, SpaceCorp will increase movement, research will give you extra cards, and so on and so forth. And again, the specifics of all of these things is just one of those things that adds complexity to what I was saying. It's a very simple idea. Take one action, resolve it. But how you resolve it? Well, many actions there. Now you have your bases placed in locations that have a production value, like in that case. Now, if you have locations that have a production value, and suppose, and then we have another one there, we have this one here, And maybe we have, I don't know, I'm grabbing a kind of random one here. So suppose that you have several bases in locations that have a production value, then you can take the produce action and pretty much you will collect the income produced by those bases and by the resources around those bases. Finally, you have the genetics and revelation actions. Those are the ones that will allow you to move your genetics marker to gain a genetic upgrade. The revelation marker on your personal board that will give you revelation/breakthrough upgrades, very important. Also, you can take the action of upgrading. That is, there are certain cards that have an indication that tells you that instead of playing it and discarding it, you may upgrade it as infra. You take that action simply to place a card on your personal board, and that is how you improve your personal board. Later in the game, you have other actions, the most important of which on the third board is to establish a colony, but that's a whole separate procedure, and we don't need to get there quite yet. I like this game a lot. Now, disclaimer, I only played in solitaire against the AI and I really enjoyed it. I don't feel the terrible urge of playing it with other people. I don't feel the urge of playing a game that I need to set up and then put away and then set up again with other people. I need to teach them different sets of rules. All of the logistics of the game, when I'm by myself, I take the time that I want. I put on an audiobook when I'm moving things around, and again, putting away a board, setting up the other board, putting around the cards, etc., etc. It just works that way. And maybe it is also because of the theme. The theme is fascinating to me. It has a very strong narrative, not the traditional kind of narratives like you have in most novels or movies. Those stories are about individuals. And the dungeon crawler genre, for example, in gaming does that very well to give you the sense of an adventure story. This is the history, the future history of a civilization. The scope, the main emphasis is on large groups. You don't see the faces of the individuals. It's about civilizations. It's about corporations, large groups of people working together towards this epic objective of reaching the stars. And maybe because of this, again, there's a certain philosophical beauty to it. I like the fact I like to play contemplatively. It's just me and the universe. Yeah, there's an annoying AI, but I don't know that friendly banter that can go on with a group when playing against other human players would really fit the kind of atmosphere that the game has created for me and that I enjoyed experiencing in that way. And really it is an epic journey from the beginning, in which your priorities are, I need to figure out how to defeat the gravitational pull of the Earth and break out of the atmosphere, to now I am contacting alien civilizations, I'm going to different star systems. I am changing and developing in ways genetically that maybe I'm not even human anymore, and yet I'm still at the legacy of those people that braved going from the Earth to the Moon. So there is really fascinating in that sense, the kind of narrative. Again, it's a narrative of a civilization, not that of a group of individuals, but it has definitely a sense of philosophical existential depth to me. And when it comes to gameplay itself, it is very solid. Actually, I was really impressed by how the AI was designed. Basically, when you're using one deck for your own actions and another deck which at the bottom has the symbols. So at the bottom of each card there are the symbols that will determine the actions of the AI. The AI has an easier time doing actions to you. They just pop up on the board, but of course, since they are more mindless than you, hopefully there is balance there. They can do things more easily, but they're not as rational. They don't grab opportunities the same way that you would. But from time to time, for example, they still grab cards from the offer area, and you so right there you have an interesting decision, like to do something now, because maybe the AI will show up in that sector before I do, but then that means I'm delaying the cards, and maybe the AI will destroy those cards. It really presents interesting challenges there. And then, as for gameplay itself, you have I'd say that you have a certain, I wouldn't say script, but the actions are logically connected to one another. You can't build before you have explored. You can't explore before you have actually been there, and that kind of stuff. But yet within the script you have a lot of different decisions, mainly and again based on what the AI might be doing. The fact that the contracts that you're completing, only the first person gets to do that, so you can concentrate in an area, and that is pretty easy. Oh, I'm going to exploit this area a lot of little moons here where I can build a lot of stuff. Why should I go and travel far? But then I'm missing the objective, the bonus that I get from expanding. So they're interesting decisions. I would say at the macro level, the decision is, are you rushing through the board, trying to reach the edges, or are you trying to exploit the fact that you reach a certain area and then you're going to build there? Interesting trade-offs there. And then there are more, when you look up more up close, there are interesting decisions. You're trying to figure out which space base should I do here? Should I exploit this thing? Should I place resources? Should I how do you set up your infra, your board? That is another big system of decisions, because you want to upgrade them, but then you have to decide which way. Now I'm moving a lot, but I can't do much else. Now I can explore, build a lot for free, but I'm struggling to go places. And also some cards have the shielded action, which has a lower value than the same action without the shield. And maybe there are times in which you take a profit loss by accomplishing certain actions without the shield, so the radiation damages your technologies and all that. But that's another trade-off. Should I do it now, unshielded, with with a penalty, or wait a little bit, build a bigger pile of resources before I do it shielded? So a lot of interesting decisions, and yet again there's this interesting tension between a lot of theme and the core engine, which is so simple, so lean. Mind you, I still struggle to learn it a little bit. I read the manual at least 3 times, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's the way it's written. It took me a while before the game sort of clicked together in my head. But when it did, what I had on my hand was a great solitaire game, one that definitely feels rewarding playing, that tells you an amazing story and gives you a ton of interesting decisions. SpaceCorp 2300, not for everybody because of the length it takes to play and because the number of rules and special effects you have to learn, but for the right people, definitely a very fascinating game.